Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Von Manor, where Roger and I have returned to talk about technology. We're talking about technology, Roger. And who better to talk about technology than us? We're such high tech guys. So, yes, today we will be answering the burning question which every reader has: how much book tech do you need as a reader? How much do you actually need? Well, that's what we're here for, Roger, to answer these important questions. I was thinking about this because I watch a lot of BookTube. Not as much as I would like, but I watch a fair amount. And there are some booktubers who, whenever a new e-reader of any great significance comes out, they'll buy it and they'll talk about it on their channel. And so I can only assume that they have houses full of old e-readers collecting dust that are just not being used. And I was wondering, do regular readers do this sometimes? Do people who are not on BookTube and don't need to show off an e-reader on screen, do they buy like every new e-reader that comes out? I bet there are some people who do. But what do you need? As a reader, what do you actually need? Well, let's strip it down to the basics, Roger, and figure this out. Because it all depends on, of course, your needs as a reader. We're all different and we all lead different lives. So, we're going to have different needs as readers. I think the answer for most readers, probably most regular people who read, is probably zero. You probably need zero tech, well, other than a lamp. You're going to need a lamp or a light source of some kind because, it gets dark. I don't know if you noticed, but it gets dark. And the light, the sun, the light source goes away, and so you need a lamp. Some people don't. Some people have supernatural powers. But the rest of us, yeah, you would need that. But otherwise, you just need books. And that's all you need for a lot of people. But probably most of the people who watch this channel and other BookTube channels are heavy-duty readers. They read a lot. And by a lot, I'm thinking anywhere from 50 to 100 books a year, which for most people, that's a lot of books because most people don't read all that much. But yeah, if you're watching this, you probably read quite a bit. And so your needs as a reader are going to be different. And as far as myself, when I think about my needs as a reader, I do find an e-reader helpful, And I have three basic things going on in my life. One is space considerations. I've as gigantic as this palatial house is, I've pretty much reached my limit of space for books. Some ladies who live in this house might say that I've exceeded the space that I have available for books, but I've reached at least the space. And so I'm pretty much out of room for books. Also, I'm not home a lot. I'm out and about, and so I do a fair amount of reading in places other than this house. And so I need portability. I need something to read that's portable. Also, I like old stuff. I like old books. A lot of books that I read, are long out of print. And one good thing about a lot of the things that I read is that a lot of the stuff that I read is in the public domain because it's so old. But a lot of these books can be hard to find physically. If you just go into a bookstore, you're not going to find a lot of the books that I actually want to read. And so if I want to read these books, I would either have to order them, and get like very often a print on demand copy, which is not going to be that good anyway. Or I could just summon it upon my e-reader, very often for free, because these books are old. And, you can't beat convenience like that. So I have those needs. So an e-reader for me is a very useful device. And I would hate to be without it. So how much technology do I actually need? Me personally, I need, for reading regular books, I need an e-reader. And I think for most people, one e-reader is really all you need. I mean, even for readers who read a lot. So you've got to decide for yourself, well, okay, an e-reader would be helpful. What do I need? An e-ink e-reader is what I recommend. I've read books on an iPad. It's not a terrible experience, but it's certainly not the best experience. E-ink e-readers are far superior just for reading books. But there are a million e-readers on the market. So, okay, I need an e-reader at least. What do I get? I would get the simplest thing you could find. And the one that I use is just the basic model of Kindle. The most basic thing. Well, it looks weird on screen. This is the most basic Kindle model you can get. It's the basic little Kindle, and that's it. There are a bunch of different Kindles from Amazon. There's what are there now? There are the Paperwhite. There's Paperwhite. Other than this, there's the Scribe, which is the big scribe with the pen, and you could make notes. There's the Colorsoft, which I find inexplicable, and then there's the Color Scribe. There's a Color Scribe now, which is enormously expensive. To me, those are all unnecessary. There are advantages. Let's do a quick comparison to from this. This is the most basic thing that Amazon makes, to the next up, which would be the Kindle Paperwhite. This little device, the little Kindle, is so good nowadays that there isn't a ton of difference other than the Paperwhite screen's a little bit bigger. It has like a soft light thing going on, which I find unnecessary. The screen adjusts, the lighting on the screen adjusts to the lighting in the room, which I find annoying, so I'm glad that this doesn't have that. Although I'm sure you could shut that off on your Paperwhite. What else does it have? I'm sure there is some other stuff going on that the Paperwhite could do, but if you just want to read books, all those things, it's not worth the extra expense. This thing is about $100. If you get it on sale, you can get it a little less, but it's about $100, which is, pretty much what I would want to pay for an e-reader. And it does everything an e-reader should do. It holds a ton of books. The battery life is really, really good. And the screen nowadays on just the basic model is really, really clear. So this is really, I feel like, all I need. And I suspect that this is all most readers need. You don't need all the bells and whistles. In fact, that can be not the best thing for an e-reader. The Colorsoft, why would you need that? Why would you need a little Kindle that has color? Too small to read comic books on, and most of the things that you would read that need color, you'd probably want a bigger screen for anyway. So that I still find the Colorsoft an inexplicably unnecessary device, particularly for the price. The Scribe is kind of like a whole other deal. If you write a lot and you write a lot of notes, maybe. If it's really, really important to you to have a big screen, okay. Maybe you have bad eyes and, you want the bigger screen so you could make the letters bigger comfortably. Okay, that's a legitimate reason. But otherwise, I find it detrimental because this thing is portable, which is one of the very necessary things. This thing will fit in my pocket. So I don't need anything other than this for just basic reading. The iPad, I have an iPad too. The iPad is very helpful because you could read comic books on it. And I am a huge comic book reader. So, the iPad is helpful for that. So I read comics on an iPad. In fact, anything of this sort, magazines, anything, I guess, that would involve color for most people, the iPad is helpful, and I would prefer this actually to like a Kindle Scribe or Scribe Color, because you can't beat the sharpness of this image for a comic book. So since I read a ton of comic books, the answer for me personally, how much book tech do I need? Two. I need two things. Comic books, I need the iPad. Books, this. Especially nowadays, Roger, when mass markets, the smaller mass market books are just a thing of the past. This is more portable than any of those anyway. So, yeah, the answer is two. I suspect for most readers, it's going to be one or two devices. And that's really all you really need as a reader. You could push this to three devices if you listen to a lot of audiobooks, because a phone is basically the best thing, I think, probably for an audiobook. But we all have phones anyway. We all have them in. Roger doesn't have a phone, but the rest of us have phones. I mean, Roger, he's pretty basic as far as technology is concerned. He's still upset that papyrus scrolls no longer exist. I'm sorry. First those, and then mass market paperbacks. It sucks. The world we live in. But yeah, I'm thinking the answer is probably one or two devices at most. Never spend a ton of money on an e-reader if you can get away with it. You know, I think $100 is about right for an e-reader. You don't even have to get them new. You can get, used ones that work just fine. Kindles last a long time, and a lot of e-readers do. Most, for example, of the Kindle line, most of what those more expensive Kindles do, I think, are unnecessary. And I think that's probably true of a lot of e-readers. So I think probably the more basic is probably better, because all most readers want to do on their e-readers are just to read books. That's it. Read text. That's all you really need them for. Mostly. If you find you have a need for something else, that's different. But I would really resist the temptation to buy stuff just to buy stuff, and really try to figure out, what are my needs as a reader? Do I need an e-reader at all? Am I retired? Do I spend all my time at home? And so I don't need the portability of an e-reader, and I've got a million books anyway, and maybe I don't need one? Okay. But I think for a lot of modern readers, e-readers are handy. I know that new books are too expensive as ebooks, but most new books are too expensive. I mean, just plain and simple. And that's just true across the board. And yeah, if you're paying more than $10 for an ebook, you might as well get a print copy. But a lot of the stuff, for example, that I read, a lot of older stuff is a lot less expensive than that as ebooks when you find them. So I think the basic, and a basic e-reader is probably all you need. And like I said, iPad for comics or any kind of color stuff that you want to read. Yeah, so one or two devices. That's it, Roger. That's all you need. That's all you need in life. The other stuff, you're just wasting money, maybe. Maybe. Aren't you glad you have us around, Roger and I? High-tech guys. Well, that's all for today. I will catch you again on Sunday. I intend to be here on Sunday for a special comic book video. And then after that, I will have another reading report. Hopefully, I will have something to report. And I still have to do that top of the bookcase. I will do that one of these days, I swear. Anyway, I will catch you next time.